Good morning and welcome to December's Nellie on the Sofa. I'm Ben Slater, I'm the Director and Principal Social Worker at Nellie Supports, and this month even, I have Louise, our Senior Social Worker, on the sofa. We're going to be talking about capacity to make gifts. So welcome to our Christmas one. Louise is sporting a very nice Christmas hat. I decided to go against wearing a Christmas hat for the simple reason that I'm working on the bowl full of jelly and on the beard. So hopefully next year I'll be able to wear the full suit and you won't be able to spot the difference between me and the real Santa Claus. And he is real, boys and girls. He's definitely real.
And it's something to go for. It's a look, isn't it? The real Santa.
Yeah, I think so, especially when it comes to July, August time, going down the beach, pair of Speedos on. The Santa look is very much in.
Yeah.
I think it fits perfectly in with the American beach holidays and things like that. You know, Miami Beach, Santa Claus in his Speedos walking down the seafront. Absolutely.
That's a picture that we'll never forget.
Yeah, no, it's one that you
and
want
a gift
to forget.
that's worth giving.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad I was able to give you that gift.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Lou, we're going to be talking about capacity to give because it's Christmas.
It is.
And it's that season of goodwill and all those sorts of
Absolutely,
things.
and it's that season where you want to be providing people, your family members, friends. I don't know about anybody else, but I always seem to spend way too much money on Christmas because it's that concept of you want to make people happy by buying them things, and everybody's the same. Everybody wants to make other people happy. They want to provide them with gifts, money, items, that sort of thing.
It's almost like we have to be careful not to slip down the route of talking about commercialism and capitalism and how much does marketing, FUMI, act on our capacity, how much undue influence does marketing have on us, things
undue
like that.
Influence is a good one. Coercion, those sorts of things.
And we are living in a world where people are regularly spending thousands and thousands of pounds at Christmas time on gifts for loved ones. Sometimes not loved ones. Sometimes they're making non-capacious decisions to give gifts to other people. But we're seeing that the price of it, or the money that people spend on gifts each year is just increasing, isn't it? It's not something that's getting smaller. When I was a kid, you'd get a book and some clothes, and in fact, one of my favourite memories, I've still got the book, is the famous 5 set of stories signed by my mum and dad. It was probably £5 at the time, which was a lot of money in 1987 or whenever it was, 1986. But that was one of my main presents, was this book. Now, a book is a sort of stocking filler. Yeah, it's well, even that, stockings are now this big instead of that big. Everything's had to get bigger because we're spending more money.
It does open up your eyes to how much we are actually spending, and how much things actually cost. And I suppose it can motivate perhaps maybe older members of the family to want to then actually pay for that, pay for their family members. They see them struggling at the particular times of the year.
We see family members where they're trying to give away set amounts, £2,000, £3,000, because of tax purposes and things like that.
Yes, of course.
So they're large amounts of money, or for most of us, it's a large amount of money. I suppose if you're Jeff Bezos, receiving a £2,000 gift is tuppence.
Literally nothing, is it? Yeah.
But for the majority of us, receiving a £2,000-3,000 cheque from grandma is a major gift, and if she's handing that out to all of her grandchildren, 10, 15 grandchildren, and to her children as well, you could be looking at a £20,000-30,000 bill over Christmas.
Which is okay. I mean, if grandma can make that decision for herself and she's got the assets to be able to do so, and that's what she wants to do, and that's what she ordinarily does at that time of year, we can't really question it. It just becomes problematic when, is that her decision?
Yeah.
Is grandma actually making that decision herself, or is it she's got a decline in her cognition? We have. Obviously.
And that's where then the Capacity Act comes in.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to, because I do this every time, and apologies to those that have heard me say this for the past 8 or 9 sessions, but I'll repeat it again because we still get people ringing up with the old COP3 forms and asking why our report looks different to any other capacity assessment that they've seen and things like that. Earlier this year, the Capacity Act changed. Stage 1 was, is there an impairment of the mind or brain? And then stage 2, understand, retain, use away and communicate. Earlier in the year, it flipped. And now stage 1 is, can the person understand, retain, use and weigh and communicate, and then can they retain that information long enough to be able to use and weigh the information, consequences and risks, and then can they communicate an effective decision. So it's changed slightly. So when we're talking about capacity today, we're talking about a certain piece of case law, which you're going to come on to, but we're also talking about the Mental Capacity Act 2005, the amended version, the MCA 2005 version 2.0.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to explain the case law? Because it's quite specific to gifts.
Yes. It would be RE Beanie, and that was 1978, and it came about because of gifting and because a will was contested to do with the gifting in this specific case. It brought about a common law test, which we follow when we're providing the person with information or we're asking them questions actually in the assessment, which we have to consider, are they disposing of their only asset of value? Okay, so some people have a lot of assets, some people only have, let's say, a property or one bank account. So are they disposing of all of that? So would it massively impact on that individual?
Using Mr. Bezos again as an example.
Mr. Bezos,
the world's richest man. If he comes along and drops £10 million into my bank account,
and he would,
yeah, as he does. He does. No, me and Jeff are quite close. It's because we've got the same. He's got the same middle name as me, Jeff, and it's spelled the same way. That's why we're besties. But if he dropped £10 million in my account, theoretically, by the time he's seen the transfer go through, he's made £10 million again.
Absolutely.
Anyway. So it's not going to impact on his assets.
Overall, no, absolutely not.
If my granddad, who's got £50,000 in the bank, drops me £49,000 in the bank, that's a massive impact on his life.
Absolutely, because you've got to consider the fact that, does he understand the impact that it's going to have on the quality of life if he does give you all of his money? Is there things that he's still got to pay for, obviously? Are you going to be taking all of his money off you with him gifting you that?
But it's important that we look at that. How much is the gift?
It is, because
if Grandad's giving the kids 50p sweet money every Friday, then you can't say that that's impacting it. That's not enough for us to sort of go, well, he hasn't got capacity to make the £10,000 gift, so therefore we'll have to assess every Friday if he's got 50p to give to the grandkids. Because it's still a gift.
It is.
But it's a different
type
of gift.
The amount of the estate is relative to how much they should actually understand that decision.
Yeah.
Okay. We've also got to consider, are they preempting the provisions of their will? So have they already allocated what they're going to be gifting to somebody else in their will? And if so, why are they giving it to that person then? Is there some undue influence? Is there the likelihood of it being contested after their death? Because let's say I say to you, Ben, in my will, I'm going to leave you my house. And then I go and give my house to
we all got
Fumi.
That on record. This is being recorded,
I'm signing. Yeah. I'm signing now. But I could do that. I could say, I'm going to do that in my will, and then all of a sudden I give my house to somebody else, and then you're like, well, actually that was promised to me. Louise promised that to me in her will. So now I'm going to contest that because it was actually
we see this quite often, don't we? Where
we do.
We go and see a client and they've got 2 children and a wife, and everything goes to the wife. If the wife has passed away, then it goes equally between 2 children. Quite a simple, basic, standard will. Nothing complicated about it. But then all of a sudden the son hits some financial difficulties and dad wants to help him out. And it's a genuine reason.
Of course.
And I'm going to give my son £100,000 because he needs help paying off his mortgage. He's found himself unemployed. I want to pay off his mortgage, so then he hasn't got that to worry about.
Yeah.
That's a normal caring thing to do.
It is.
But then when we're sat talking to them, we say, well, you know, what about your daughter? Oh, well, she's taken care of in the will. Oh, okay, so what's she getting? Well, she's getting half of everything. But there's £100,000 less
Yes.
of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if theoretically what you're doing is giving your son, if the entire estate is worth £500,000, we're giving daughter £250,000 and son £350,000.
Yes.
And that's what they have to.
And that's the preempting, isn't it?
They have to be able to understand that, don't
they? They do, and you know, potentially adjust the will to, and a lot of people do adjust the will to when they consider that. Well, actually, I have just provided that person with this gift, so therefore, in the will, it will reflect a lesser share for son rather than daughter.
I don't know about you though. That I'm always surprised when we go out and do these. The amount of people that don't want to adjust the will because they've already justified in their head why they're giving this gift, and sometimes it'll be like, oh well, you know, I'm giving my son this £100,000, but I have helped my daughter out in the past and I've done this and this, and part of me sat there going, I love the fact that you've thought about it, but that's quite calculating.
And it does,
and it's great to show that they've thought about it because it shows they're using and weighing.
Yeah.
But I then have to sort of go, well, okay, you gave your daughter, I don't know, support with putting a deposit down on a house. I can understand you saying there's two gifts. How much was the deposit? Oh, it's £5,000.
You've given son 100.
Yeah, there's a bit of
but
she'll ask us to, you know, help with the shopping every so often. £100,000. Helping with the shopping every so often, it's still not quite levelling out for me.
Another one of the criteria is showing preference for one child over another. So that could be, that looks like on paper showing a preference for one child over another.
And you're allowed to do that as well.
You are, but you have also got to understand that, you know, it could be contested after the fact, after your death.
But I was talking to somebody the other day and they mentioned that their father always told them who their favourite son was and was being honest about it as well, saying that the eldest son was their favourite and the other two were afterthoughts, and that, you know, he loved them,
and they accepted that.
But David was his favourite. That's who he loved.
Yeah.
The other two he loved, but if it was a choice between the three of them, David would get everything because that was his favourite child.
So how do you, I mean, obviously you've got to recognise that. So when they would know, and when Dad had written his will, knowing that the other two brothers, knowing that David was the favourite, they would probably appreciate if David got more in his will, wouldn't they? However,
I'd be angry. Be angry.
However, legally, I'm sure that they could still contest the will.
I don't know on what grounds. Ooh. I mean, that's one for our solicitors out there to answer. I don't know what grounds they would be able to contest that. I'm interested because I know for a fact that my mum and dad prefer Katie over me and my brother. So if anything, one ends up with everything, it's going to be the darling little girl in our family. Yeah. And even though she's 35 and got 3 kids and married, she's still their darling little girl. Yeah. There's no bitterness.
But I mean, back to obviously.
Oh, we're not doing my family therapy.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not paid enough. But obviously back to the gifting, and you know, we made an important point of discussing about it's relative to the amount that's being gifted, which you know, you have to emphasise that. So I would, whilst doing a capacity assessment, I would always make sure that I know how much the gift is going to be, and I can assess their understanding on, you do know that this is an awful lot of your estate and what you're providing.
If you bring this right down to its basics, as one of our university professors said, simplify.
Yeah.
They have to understand the value of money.
They do.
On a real basic level, they have to have some understanding of what is the value of money. Because we do go and see some people who,
we do,
mum, dad, brother, whoever it is that's asked us to go out and assess, is desperate for them to have capacity because the gift is important. You know, sometimes these gifts aren't just a nice thing.
It's a deposit for a property.
It's to make sure that they can stay in their own home or something like that. They're important things. and we go and speak to the person, and they just don't understand the concept of money, let alone the value of money. And for those that splitting the difference, concept is what is money?
Yeah,
what is the physical
what's
attribute?
What's the value?
Yeah.
Different values.
Yeah. Well, what is it?
Yeah.
What do you use it for? What's the concept of money? And then there's a value of actually how much is a £5 note actually worth? That, can I buy a Ferrari for £5, or can I buy I don't know what you can buy for a £5 anymore, a loaf of bread.
You made an interesting point, I think, the other day when you was talking about when you was doing it. I think it was a testamentary assessment, and the person would insist that their property was still worth £2,000 because they bought it in something like 1968.
Yes, yeah.
For £2,000, so they've got to appreciate that the values increase over time.
Yeah, because then what they were doing was they were sitting there and going, well, I've got £2,000 in the bank, I'll leave that to one son.
Yes.
And I'll leave the house to the
another
other, because
son.
the house is worth £2,000.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't understand the value of their
it's
estate.
changed because ultimately the house was to them worth £2,000, so they thought that they was being fair.
We have to see that when you're assessing for gifting. Okay, I'm making £100,000 gift here, but actually, is my house going to be worth? And then I'm leaving my house to my daughter as recompense.
Yeah.
But actually, by the time I pass away in 20, 30 years' time, my house price is, instead of being £250,000, is now £1 million. So my daughter's inherited £1 million, but I gave my son £100,000.
They would have to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would. I mean, if they was gifting, let's say, the house whilst they was alive to their daughter, they would have to understand that property had gone up in value, and they would have to understand that they're, preempting the provisions of their will, and
then we have to
consequences,
consider care costs as well.
Deliberate deprivation of assets. We always try and.
What I was actually thinking was, because I see this so much where people are sat there going, and they're desperate to get their will written, and I'm not laughing at them. It's the situation where you've got one family member that's going, no, we need to get this will written because my brother's going to take everything off of him. My brother wants to get this will written where he gets everything. And the two families are arguing over it. And then there's mum or dad in the middle, living in a care home. The house is being sold, and you're sat there going, you're arguing over £200,000. But by the time your dad passes away, all of that money's going to have been spent on care fees. So you're destroying your relationships, you're destroying your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over something that actually you're probably going to end up with 10 grand each.
I mean, if that could be, because care costs are really quite expensive when you're self-funding.
So you have to take into, when you're talking about gifts and things like that, you have to say, well, okay, you're leaving your son, you're giving your son £100,000 now.
Yeah.
You've got £100,000 in the bank that you're going to leave in your will to your daughter, but is that going to be there?
Yeah. That is a good point. Because if you're thinking about selling the property and going into a care home, you will be liable for your care fees. Yeah. So you would have to determine if they actually understood that information as well. So there is some complexities involved in considering, and I just previously mentioned deliberate deprivation of assets. That's another complexity that's involved in it. It's not just to do with the care fees. We have to consider actually, are they being perceived as giving a gift to somebody to get out of paying care fees?
Yeah, which the house is the one that we see all the time. I say that.
No,
we don't. Yeah. We used to see that all the time,
but not so much.
Yeah, I think that the media and social media has helped stop that happening, because people realise now that if mum and dad own a house, they're probably going to have to sell it to pay for their care.
Yeah, I think that's what we understand now. I think is recognising that we do have to pay care fees. I think we do have to understand that.
And I think if you're people, they know that all the little cons that started to work, the little ways around it. Yeah. I mean, one of the ones I heard was set up a limited company, sell your house to the limited company for £1, and then rent your house from your limited company.
Okay.
That's quite genius. Of course, the local authority are going to find out you've just sold your house for £1. Doesn't matter who you've sold it to.
They will find out.
They'll come after it and say, well, actually,
out.
you did have this £500,000 or £1 million bloody mansion,
Yeah.
and you've sold it for £1. Come on, you know, we
I mean,
want our money.
There are legitimate ways to look into wealth management
Yeah.
if you do want to provide some inheritance for your children or your grandchildren. There are legitimate ways, and absolutely people should do that.
You have to plan for that.
You do have to plan in advance for
we
that.
talk about this on. We did some training actually on deprivation of assets for FUMU Best Foundation. A couple of weeks back, and one of the things was if you plan far enough in the past or in the present, then you're kind of okay. It's when people go, oh my God, I've just been diagnosed with dementia. Now I'll try and protect everything.
Or I'll give my house to my daughter, make them rash decisions.
My son and things like that.
Yeah.
Because one of the thresholds for deprivation of assets is were care needs foreseeable.
Yes.
And if you've just been diagnosed with something like
dementia,
I might have to go to the doctors myself. Then there's clear evidence actually.
Yeah. You can assume that
there
in the
going
future.
to be care needs in the future.
There is.
There is things you can do to protect yourself, but a lot of people do leave it too late and then start making those gifts, and that's where deprivation of assets starts tripping them up.
Or we get called out too late, and the person lacks capacity to even make the smaller gifts, the nice gifts. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't continue to make those gifts. If they've got a lasting power of attorney in place, or if they've got a deputy in place, there are ways and means that you can still go through that gifting process.
As long as it just has to be in their best interests.
If it's something that they've already ordinarily done before, but it's important to think about all of these different things when you're considering gifting, isn't it?
It's easy to think about gifts as cash as well, or a house.
But it isn't necessarily, is it?
No.
No.
I mean, we've seen people make gifts of cars.
Yeah.
We've seen people make gifts of lodging, where they've come to live with that person.
Or provide care.
Yeah, or provide care for that person.
Yeah.
We've seen lots of different variations of what a gift actually is. One of the ones is selling a house to somebody for less than market value.
Yes.
So if you're selling a £500,000 house, but you're selling it to your son for £250,000, that's okay. If you were to do that, you're capacious. You've got the ability to do that. You're allowed to do that. You can sell me it for £50 if you want. Yeah. It's your choice. But essentially, what you're doing is, if I'm buying a £500,000 house off you for £250,000, you're giving me a £250,000 gift. And that's the way deprivation of assets and things like that.
And I would have to understand what, I would have to understand that actually there's £500,000 worth in that property, and essentially I'm selling it for under the market value.
Yeah, so I'm giving away £250,000.
Gifting you that property. So provided I don't have any care needs or foreseeable care needs, or that I'm not deliberately doing it to get out of paying for care fees, and that's evidenceable, then I can do that if I've got capacity.
I'm going to drop a proviso in. Any solicitors that are watching this, I don't know whether that's true what I've just said. I've no idea actually. If Louise wanted to sell me her house for £5, she's got full capacity. She's fully, there's no impairment of the mind or brain. She's just a very kind person who wants to help me out by selling her £250,000 house for a £5. Is she allowed to do that? I don't know. I mean, capacity under the MCA you would be.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether there's other legislation that we don't get involved with.
No, because we don't. We get involved with the sort of the hands-on, the REB, the Mental Capacity Act, the practical side.
I just wonder whether the tax man is sat there going, well, actually, you might want to sell it for a £5, but I want my stamp duty, and I want this, and I want that.
I mean, surely I should be allowed to, if I wanted to. If that was my decision, surely I should be allowed to do that.
I see now my brain is going, well, if I was in the police, I'd be asking questions. Why are you selling that car for a £5? Is this money laundering? Is this, what is this?
Well, we're thinking of, sort of undue influence, aren't we?
Yeah.
Or,
So, if there's any solicitors watching this, just out of curiosity, that's all. I don't think Louise is going to sell me.
No, because I'd have nowhere to live.
No.
And
but I would.
You would have 2 houses.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do I explain this to my family at Christmas? Like, we're on the streets.
Well, there's Samaritans and stuff.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ben. No. I'm going to say that this is proposed undue influence.
Yeah.
But then, joking about this, there is, and we do come across a lot, undue influence, don't we?
We do, yeah.
And in some instances, it is really, really difficult to prove, isn't it?
I think especially when it comes to capacity to gift. I think
yes.
The undue influence there, the pressure on family around, it's my inheritance, I'm entitled to this inheritance. Mum's worked all her life to provide this inheritance to me, which, as I say that, it grates on me. It really grates on me.
But sometimes Mum wants them to have the money before she dies, so she can see the enjoyment in their eyes spending their money while she's still alive.
Absolutely, and this is one thing when we're doing testamentary, and we keep talking about words because it ties so closely with capacity.
Yeah, it does tie in.
But one of the things when we're assessing capacity to write a will is they have to understand that gift within the will they can only get after they've died. Yeah. And there's a lot of times where I hear sweet little Doris say, oh no, they can have it whenever they want. No, Doris, they can't. They can't have it whenever they want. If it's in your will, they can only have it when you die. Yeah. If it's a gift now, they can have it. Yeah. But if it's in your will, only when you drop down dead. Yeah. That's it.
But then, some people, they get to a certain age where either they're going into a care home or, they know that they haven't got long left, that they do start then gifting things that should have been in the will to family members.
We assessed somebody a long while ago who they were City of London accountants, him and his wife, if I remember rightly. They were in the 90s. It's not often that I'm shaken by how much money people have got because we hear 5 million and 20 million and 10 million all the time, and it's not mine. At the end of the day, I'll be shocked if I look in my bank account and I see that. If it's in somebody else's bank account, I'm not getting any of it. I'm not spending any of it. But this guy, we were doing his testamentary, and I said to the guy, "Oh, have you got a pension?" And he says, "Oh yes, 10,000." And I went, "Oh, okay, a year?" And he said, "No, a month." And that was the first time I ever went, "Oh my goodness," because I know you can win the lottery for £10,000 a month for life. And then he said the best line. He said, "Oh, and the wife gets the same." So just on their pensions, they had £20,000 a month income. Then they had stocks and shares and all sorts of different money coming in. And he said, "This is one of the biggest problems we've got, though, because I cannot give it away. We're giving to charity, but there's only so much that you kind of want to give to charity." He says, we give gifts to the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, the children, but up to the tax threshold, because we don't want them having to pay tax on anything."
No.
He says, and we're at the point now where we're spending probably about £2,000 a month. We've got a housekeeper, we've got carers, we don't really go out of the house. Shopping bills very little, gas and electric's very little.
Gosh.
What do we, we can't go on holiday anymore because we're disabilities and we're of our age. Yeah. So that's it. So I've got every month another 20 grand hits the bank. Yeah. And they just can't spend it, and they struggle.
What was you there for the assessing?
It was for testamentary capacity. But he knew full well the taxman was taking half of his assets at the end of the day. It was going to go to, and there wasn't, he'd done as much as he could on inheritance planning, but there's only so much that you can do, I suppose, especially when you see that monthly increase and it just going up and up and up and up and up and up.
Because, if he was giving regular gifts, there is only a limit that you can give to family members, isn't it? Yeah. So he couldn't dispose of it on a regular basis.
No, and you try to dispose of £20,000 to £30,000 every month. Kind of like that Tom Hanks film, isn't it? Where he's got to spend £1 million in 28 days or something to get the. I can't remember. No, it wasn't. It was Brewster's Millions, wasn't it? Not Tom Hanks. Yeah, Brewster's Millions. I can't remember the guy's name now. A little bit like that. You when you actually need to in that circumstance, he couldn't spend it. He physically couldn't spend it fast enough.
Wow.
Yeah, now somebody's going to be putting a message on there telling me who the actor was, and I'm trying to remember.
I
And
can't
and
remember.
he used to be in films with Gene Wilder, and I can't think of his Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor,
That's
yeah,
the one,
I remember. Yeah. I remember Richard Pryor. He failed, didn't he, at giving everything away?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, by $1 or something like that. I think it was. Yeah.
But we digress.
We do digress.
Yes.
Yeah,
We have digressed.
But undue influence.
Yeah.
It's like I said. Yeah, we do see that a massive amount, especially when it comes to inheritance.
And I think there's this, there has been this myth, and it's absolutely not true, about the 7 years. Have you heard about the 7-year rule? People think that if they give away their house, they won't get pulled up over the deliberate
As long
deprivation
as
of
it's been
assets.
7 years.
That is not true. The local authority can.
I've never seen that written down.
But
to
it's
be fair.
to do
I
with
don't know where that's
inheritance tax.
Okay.
It's if you've given a gift and lived over 7 years, then that wouldn't be part of your estate for inheritance tax.
And so
However,
that's been pulled over into deprivation of assets.
it's someone, and a lot of people have said this to me. Well, if I give my house away and it's been over 7 years, and then I need care, then they can't take that into account. That's not true. The local authority could say at any point, if they can prove it, they will take that money back from there. It's not true, the 7 year thing.
They have to prove that that care was foreseeable at the time of making the gift.
Or
essentially, that's
you are disposing of your assets to get out of paying for care fees. So if they find any evidence that I give my house away to you now, which is given, isn't it? Because we've got people witness it. And then the local authority comes back, why did Louise give her house away 20 years ago? I'm sure that they could still do something.
As long as 20 years ago, if you had Parkinson's dementia, a diagnosis 20 years ago, even if it wasn't really affecting you then, but it would there was a diagnosis, in the future. Then there was foreseeable care needs. So that's it. They'd potentially be able to turn around and say, well, actually, you then 2 weeks later, after that diagnosis, 2 weeks later, you gifted your house to your son. Yeah. You did that purposely to deprive yourself of assets.
Yeah. As much as I would say I didn't, it's
deprivation of assets is there's 3 things that they have to tick off to be able to say that this was deprivation of assets.
We're making gifting sound slightly negative, so I think it is a good thing to do.
Well, I think gifting is a bad thing if it's not to me.
I think that
I like receiving gifts.
I know. don't we
all?
all?
Particularly making them.
It can be amazing. So it can be, Grandad always pays for the family holiday every year, and he wants to continue doing so.
We've seen people that made gifts to pay for children's university fees.
Oh, it's lovely.
To me, that's an amazing thing, to pay for somebody's education. I mean, you've changed their life forever. To me, that's as, if not more important than paying for somebody to have a house.
You've enabled them to be independent.
We've seen people make gifts for deposits on properties that have had personal injury claims, and they've used some of that money from their compensation to pay for their child for a deposit on a house.
Yeah.
We've seen all sorts of different gifts that are genuinely very kind, good gifts that are honest, and that person really desperately wants to make, and there's a logical reason behind why they're making that gift. And
if they can rationalise that, provide justification, and if they can understand relative to the extent of their estate, how much is this, and if they can go, we would go out and do the mental capacity assessment with them. We would go through the R.E. Beanie case common law test, and if they can prove that they have the ability to understand, retain and weigh up and communicate a decision in that way, then why not?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a little bit of as it's Christmas, we've got a little bit of a game for you, Louise, and we're going to get you guys in to respond as well.
If as a legal professional, why would I need to do an assessment? What raises a red flag?
I think we've just explained all that for me.
I think undue influence.
If you think.
So, you know, if you think that this is a gift that's not actually coming from this person, it's something completely different from what they ordinarily would have done. They're making high risk gift choices. They
They're
are
making unequal. I can't think of another term for it. An unequal gift. They've only got 50 grand in the bank,
preference
and they're
of
making
one
a
child over
£40,000
Yeah.
gift. If it's putting them their assets out of kilter, then that large cash gifts, gifts of property should just be straight away assessed.
Okay.
And if there's concern about undue influence, I think especially under undue influence, if people start talking about my inheritance, then you need to get a capacity assessment done.
If someone pops up out of the blue that you've never actually
Yeah.
really heard of, so then, you know, as a solicitor now, Mr. Smith is leaving his house or gifting his house to John down the road. I mean, surely that raises red flags.
Sometimes it's not just about raising red flags, it's about protecting the person that's being given the gift.
Of course.
We see people where they're a carer and somebody wants to make them a gift. And that carer has become a very important part of their life. And the person just wants to give them a gift of a few £1,000s. And they're allowed to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's potentially nothing wrong with their capacity around it.
Yeah.
But to protect the carer, we get a capacity assessment done to make sure that actually nobody can say, well, there was undue influence, this person lacked capacity, anything like that. It all goes back to stopping that further litigation down the road. Same with same reasons for a testamentary capacity, to stop that litigation later down the road, to protect you guys as professionals, so you can say, I've done everything right. And ultimately to protect your client. I mean, at the end of the day, if we can only protect a service user or a client to a point, because if a solicitor comes to us and says, I want you to do this assessment because they're making a gift of property from themselves to their son, and we come back and say, no, they haven't got capacity, you guys don't do the property sale, and you're safe. Unfortunately, what we know happens is son then marches mum down the road to another solicitor, learns what he's supposed to say and not say from his interaction with you and us, and gets the property sale to go through anyway. Or goes and sees somebody a little bit less scrupulous and things like that. So sometimes it's just about protecting your professional liability as well. Yeah.
And obviously you mentioned sort of protection from further litigation, and we've seen other pieces of case law, which Kicks versus Lee, you know, where a family member has tried to prove that there was some sort of undue influence after the fact, and then that leads to the estate being contested and further complications. And, you know, we want to be able to protect someone at the point of when they're making that decision. And that's the important thing.
Looking at retrospective assessments, which we do.
We do.
And they are far more time consuming, far more difficult, and I think more difficult to take to court as well. A contemporary assessment. I mean, if we're doing a retrospective assessment and we come across evidence of a contemporary assessment, we're never going to be able to beat that. It's there, and if it's a comprehensive report, that's going to win hands down. Contemporary assessments protect everybody. Yeah. So, as I said, we've got a game for you to play, Louise, and you guys at home can join in. It's Christmas, so we thought we'd have a little bit of a Christmas party game. Why not? So please do jump on your keyboards and put your answers in the text box. So it's a naughty and nice list. So we've got some cases, very brief, and we're going to read them out, and you've got to tell us whether they should go on the naughty list or whether they should go on the nice list, because you're Santa.
I am.
It's not the hat, it's the beard.
It is the beard. It is. I did try shaving.
Yeah,
it was very dark this morning.
So,
sorry, Matt.
So, Mr. Claus is giving a gift of a train set to his grandson. Naughty or nice list?
I'm going to say nice.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
It's a Thomas the Tank Engine £15 train set.
Yeah.
Of course might not have been nice. We have had a case where somebody was gifting a train set, and it was his main and only real asset. It was worth, I think, £25,000 or £30,000, this train set.
Gosh.
He didn't really have any money in the bank. He lived in a council house, and he was giving it to his grandson, but there was no... They wanted to make sure that it was okay, because actually his grandson was in his 20s. He wasn't a little boy.
Yeah.
But straight away you think train sets and grandchildren, tiny little children.
But it was a chattel. It was worth.
Yeah.
It was valuable.
And he had 2 children, so his 2 children potentially were losing out on inheritance
Okay.
from this train set.
Yeah.
Because they were giving it to a grandson. Yeah, it turned out that he was fine. He had capacity. There was no issues about his capacity. His children he didn't really see or speak to, and his grandson was a proper train set enthusiast, and they spent all their time together. So yes, good.
So I'm going to
on the
say
nice
definitely
list, yeah.
on the nice list.
But it just shows how something is as just offhand as I'm leaving a train set to my grandson as well. Oh yeah, okay. I'm leaving a ring to my daughter.
So
Leaving a watch to my son. Oh, what is it? A Rolex.
Limited edition.
So next one, Mrs. Smith moved in with her daughter to reduce care fees.
This sounds like such a nice thing for her to do, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. But okay. Mrs. Smith has moved in with her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so what's happened to Mrs. Smith's property? What's who's going to pay?
Oh
for everything?
no. Naughty or nice? That's what you're after. Naughty or nice?
Oh, I'm going to say, do you know what? It's a lovely idea.
It's a lovely.
It's
so
a lovely,
nice,
so nice, isn't it? It's got to be nice. Someone helps
all
them.
of these are true case studies.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Smith did move in with her daughter. She left her bungalow, where she was receiving carers 3 times a day. She moved in with her daughter, and ended up sleeping on the sofa, having strip washes in the kitchen in front of her son-in-law, who would be having breakfast while she was having her strip wash.
Oh my goodness.
And it was all to reduce care fees because daughter wanted her inheritance. So essentially, I mean, it's not particularly a gift, but it's that safeguarding, it's that undue influence, it's that vulnerable adults. So yes. That said, we have also seen where actually Mrs. Smith's, we had a lady who moved in with her daughter and her wife because she were coping at home, and it had nothing to do with money, it had nothing to do with saving money. It was just, actually, we've got a spare room, I'd rather have mum come and live with me, and I can provide the care and look after her, than a stranger providing the care.
And if they can do that and there's no issues with that, then absolutely, you should have.
Yeah.
If you want
that's
to,
what
you
you
should
want
have your
to,
parents come in to live with you.
Absolutely.
But it's what is the motivation behind these
So,
decisions, isn't it?
Mr. Smith buys fish and chips for his family on a Friday. Naughty or nice, list?
Mr. Smith is lovely
He
to buy
is.
fish and chips for his family on a Friday, so I'm going to say he's on the nice list.
He's on the naughty list.
Oh. No.
So Mr. Smith was buying fish and chips for his family, and if there was any friends that were around at that time, it'd be for friends as well. If the grandson had his girlfriend with him, but there was, I think it was 21 members of the family, and it was every Friday, and Mr. Smith lived in a care home. The daughter was coming and picking him up. Taking him out for 2 hours, and that included taking him to buy the fish and chips and come back. So it was literally like, come on Dad, you can go and pay for everyone's fish and chips. And she would literally have her brothers, sisters, grandchildren, everybody around their house. They would all have fish and chips at £10 a pop. So you're looking at a couple of £100 at a time.
Every week.
And then as soon as the meal was finished, Grandad was shipped back off to the care home. So that was actually, that's fine. If he had the capacity to make that gift,
then yeah, absolutely.
And it was a gift that was impacting on him because it was impacting on his care fees and things, because he shouldn't have had £200 to pay for care because he wasn't self-funding. So where was his £200 every week coming from?
I was just about to wonder that.
So there was issues with the financing of it, but it was actually, has he got capacity to make this decision? And he didn't. He didn't have capacity to make this decision, and it was stopped.
I'm assuming
quite quickly.
in this kind of situation, this wasn't necessarily malicious. It was more.
Oh no,
like,
it was malicious.
It was malicious, wasn't
yeah,
it?
absolutely. Yeah, they were trying to spend his money for him.
Oh gosh.
The whole thing was malicious. Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
that's awful.
And they tried to say that he'd always done it. And we went back, I think it was 4 or 5 months into some bank accounts.
And he hadn't.
It hadn't.
So the evidence was
it
there.
was relatively a new idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Smith's nieces have moved in to help care for him.
The nieces, I would say that they should be on the nice list because they're looking after their lovely uncle, Mr. Smith.
So, again, unfortunately, this is on the naughty list. So, Mr. Smith was a lovely man, and his 2 nieces did move in, lived with him rent free. So there was this gift of free rent, essentially.
Yeah.
You could argue that it was supposed to be a transaction, that he was giving them a gift and that he was receiving care. His daughter lived abroad in Spain, came over to the UK. She only came over once a year. Came over and went to stay at her dad's house and found her 2 cousins living in the house. Unfortunately, she didn't have any cousins, and she'd never met these women before. And they were 2 random strangers that had found out that he
lived on his own.
And lived on his own,
Yeah.
knocked on the door one afternoon and said, "Hi, we're your cousins."
So they was taking advantage of him.
Your nieces.
Yeah.
It still wasn't quite as easy as you'd think actually getting them to leave the house. The injunctions had to be put in order and all sorts of different things. But one of the things that we had to do was assess whether he had capacity to make the decision to allow them to live
stay.
there,
Yeah.
and to make this gift. Because they were saying that actually, regardless of their relationship, he wanted them there, and he needed to have capacity to make this gift.
And they weren't
free rent, essentially.
Yeah, they weren't paying anything towards it.
And a room for where they were living, you'd be looking at about £1,000 to £1,500 a month for a bedsit in London where he was. So it was a large gift, £15,000-20,000 a year gift.
It worries me how some people are so vulnerable to situations like this. But some
again,
people are.
if the neighbours had knocked on the door and he'd said, "Oh, I've got my 2 nieces living with me. They've come to live with me to care for me." Oh, what a lovely thing!
Yeah, it
What
would
a
be.
lovely thing.
It would be.
You'd
think.
That one sentence. So Mr. Smith is giving his shares in Bupa to his financial advisor.
Ooh. I would automatically be a little bit suspicious of this one.
So we go naughty.
I'm going to go naughty with this one.
Okay. There's this again. It's all based on true case studies. So this was on the nice list. Mr. Smith had no family, no friends. He'd owned his own company and was exceptionally wealthy. And his best friend, not best friend, his adopted son was his financial advisor, and he'd stopped being his financial advisor 20 years ago.
Okay.
So a little bit of a red herring there, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And they were just they went on holiday together. They spent all their time together. The financial advisor was married, and they'd have Christmas together.
Wow.
They celebrated birthdays. They were best friends.
So all legitimate and above board.
And again, Mr. Smith in this case, it's surprising how many people are called Mr. Smith, isn't it? But Mr. Smith had full capacity for this. Unfortunately, he didn't. A year later, when we went back to see him, he wasn't well. So the last one. Oh no, it's not the last one. Sorry, no, the penultimate one. The penultimate one. I learnt that word from Sky TV the other day, watching The Day of the Jackal, because it was the penultimate episode. So, Mr. Smith is 34 years old, and he has given a Ferrari to an 18-year-old girl that he knows.
Oh, based on... 18. I mean, you can make decisions at that age, can't you?
Yeah.
And decisions about the rest of your life. I don't know whether I would say good or naughty or nice for this one. I would say, Mr. Smith, based on my own personal, which we're not allowed to use our own personal.
Oh, come on, it's Christmas. You can use your personal values.
Based on your own personal values, I think I would question why a 34-year-old is giving an 18-year-old a Ferrari.
Yeah.
I would have suspicions.
A £100,000 Ferrari as well.
I would have
There's no trick
suspicions.
here. It's not a toy Ferrari or anything like that.
Yeah.
No.
Based on my own personal.
So we're gonna. I think we need to create a tertiary category for this.
We do.
So there's the naughty list, the nice list, and the slightly creepy celebrity list.
The naughtiest.
This was Chris Evans, the DJ, who gave a Ferrari filled with roses to the 18-year-old Billy Piper, who at the time didn't have a driving licence. We just thought that we'd throw that one in there for a little bit of fun. But theoretically, that's a large gift. But as you were saying about R.E. Beanie, for Chris Evans, a £110,000 Ferrari is like me giving you £5.
Absolutely, it wasn't.
It's not a huge thing for him to consider. So even if he'd had early onset dementia or something like that,
which he didn't.
This may not have actually hit the thresholds for R.E. Beanie anyway, because it wasn't a major gift for him.
No, it wasn't.
And to be fair, I say a creepy celebrity. To be fair, they then got married and stayed married for 5 or 6 years. They were.
And when we're
in a
thinking,
good relationship,
celebrities do things differently.
And there's been far worse celebrities.
There has been far worse. So
the last one.
Okay.
The last one. 3 strangers make a gift of frankincense, myrrh, and gold to a baby. Naughty or nice list?
If I were a children's social worker, I would be really concerned about why 3 men are providing gifts to babies.
Yeah.
However, I also said, traditionally, people do give gifts to children.
Yeah,
They
of course.
put money in their hands.
Yeah, and I don't think we could begrudge the 3 wise men making gifts.
Not at Christmas.
And to be fair to them, they're wise men. I would imagine at the time they were fairly wealthy. Yeah. So a little bit of gold, a little bit of myrrh, and a little bit of frankincense probably weren't a big thing to them. No. In fact, they were probably, considering that it was to Jesus, who was the Son of God, I think they were being a bit tight-fisted.
And I think we can make exceptions for this one.
Do you know my favourite thing about that story is actually the episode of Bottom where they did that, and they found a baby and they gave it a Frankenstein mask, a bottle of Grr aftershave, and some Terry's All Gold. It's one of the best TV shows ever. So that's it. If you've got any questions, please throw them to us. Or email them out to us. We are done for the year, which is weird. It feels like only a year ago that we sort of started. Well, it was a year ago that we started. Less than a year ago.
Yeah, it was.
We are coming back as of next year. We've started speaking to some really good potential speakers to come on, not just staff from Nellie Supports, but we're speaking to solicitors and barristers and people from deputyship services, Owley Legal Services. Sean is going to be coming on and talking to us at some point in the year, and I believe we're going to convince Dave Lockwood of Finders International to come on and speak. Helen Wynne, who I'm really excited about, hopefully she'll be coming on and talking to us. She had said she will. So we've got some really good talkers coming on, Nellie on the Sofa next year. So please do join us in January. We'll get emails out. If you've got an iPhone, download the app. Just search Nellie Supports on the iPhone store. I don't know much about it other than that because I am an Android user. So please download that, and then you can download the... once you've got the download, we'll send you notifications of other webinars. And if you are interested, we have NellieCon 2025 already up and ready to rock and roll back in Peterborough next November. Fumi, you're writing it down. I've no idea what that is, so we'll have to do it next time.
Podcasts, if you want podcasts, if they feel about.
You're going to have to cut this out. I've no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, it just so. Goodbye.
I just want to finish off by wishing everybody a happy festive period, and if anybody's got any concerns about anybody that's gifting or they're worried, please just get in touch with us and we can arrange to complete a mental capacity act with RE Beanie.
That said, if any men in red suits do leave your presents under the tree, it's okay. He's allowed to be there, he's allowed to do it. Just this once.